Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
There's no real microphone.
There's no real microphone here. We weren't allowed to have one here. We were not allowed to have a microphone here because of the shutdown. They shut down the microphones. So this is a self-help rally on the part of the mayor, the citizens of the District of Columbia, and our good chairman of our Committee of Jurisdiction, Darrell Issa, to free the district's budget. The chairman has left. The chairman has left the hearing where I, too, am marked absent. And so I'm going to say my remarks, ask him to speak so he can get back to the committee which he is chairing. And then we'll hear from the mayor, who has come here to our turf, where our money is being held against our will and against the will of anyone who looks closely at what is happening. I thank my good friend and the chair of the Committee of Jurisdiction, Darrell Issa, and the mayor and the city council, members who are here, and all the D.C. residents who have joined us on the Senate side of the Capitol, where the district's budget is being held. A budget that does not contain one thin dime of federal money. I particularly thank Chairman Issa as well for his consistent attention to the District of Columbia, his constant assistance through other crises, not only this one, from getting our Southwest Waterfront bill through two separate committees, to his skillful work in getting out of committee his bill that would bring the city close to budget autonomy, and we would not be in this mess. I thank Mayor Gray and the D.C. Council for the unprecedented innovation they have used to keep the nation's capital operating. The country and the federal government owes you gratitude for not allowing the capital city to be paralyzed by the current national farce that has shut down much of the national government. Its victims are scattered across the 50 states and territories, safely out of view from the perpetrators of this crisis. But the Congress and the administration cannot escape the crisis that is quickly enveloping the capital city and becoming our worst nightmare. No matter that the city has done everything right and by the book, writing a solidly balanced budget, declining to spend surplus funds, but instead building a $1.5 billion reserve fund. Even during this fragile recovery, money that, like the $6 billion the city raises annually, it cannot touch during this crisis. Congressional Democrats and the Democratic administration, however, who had been our best friends, acted deliberately, willfully, to ensure that the District of Columbia government, an innocent bystander, was brought into the present folly and held captive. I thank Majority Leader Eric Cantor for meeting with me, hearing me out, when I asked him to get the city's local budget out of the House any way he could, by any means necessary, and he did exactly that. I particularly thank Chairman Issa, who spoke convincingly in favor of our bill on the floor and even lobbied our colleagues on both sides of the aisle to pass the District of Columbia bill. The bill indeed did pass last Wednesday, but my remarks on the floor, my conversations with highly placed administration officials and with my good friend, even my good friend, Majority Leader Harry Reid, have fallen on deaf ears. They have been driven by their well-founded fears that Republicans who have not taken the Affordable Care Act off the table are selectively pursuing federal spending bills, only to stop at health and similar appropriations and then reassure their Obamacare demands. Yet Democrats, at this critical moment, have abandoned their own long-held principled position that D.C.'s local budget must be distinguished from federal spending bills and should not be in the Congress at all. The Senate's current hold on the city's budget is absurd in light of its own pending 2014 D.C. appropriation bill that contains language permanently immunizing the district government from shutting down when the federal government shuts down. In exactly the same way, the administration's rigid, across-the-board veto threat mindlessly captures the district's local budget, although the president's own 2014 budget contains anti-DC shutdown language. And I am reliably informed that Senate Republicans would not object to moving the D.C. bill through the Senate now. Now the situation grows desperate. The city's previously appropriated contingency reserve fund envisioned for unforeseen events like natural disasters dwindles as it copes with a crisis that is as unnatural as it is artificial and unnecessary. The District of Columbia, showing economic strength and growth the federal government can only envy, is treated like hapless collateral damage. The city cannot stand by and stand back and be driven to its knees. The mayor and the council are not mere supplicants for their own locally raised funds. The District of Columbia has been through too much and come too far. In our federal democracy, it is always unacceptable for any city's local budget to bow before a federal budget and be signed by a federal executive. It is shameful now to hold the city's local funds to make a federal point. The Congress and the President correctly saw that they should not treat a vital function like the military as they treat other federal spending bills. Surely the same goes for the city's local funds, which keep the nation's capital operating for its residents, federal agencies, and visitors from throughout the country and the world. We serve notice today that the district is running out of funds to keep a big city running. The mayor's request to meet with Speaker Boehner Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid and the President is the least that he and the city are entitled to. I ask the administration to remove its veto threat on the House-passed bill approving D.C.'s local budget. And I ask Senate Majority Leader Reid to bring our bill to the floor this week before the city's fast declining contingency funds disappear. We say, please, look at the city, not through us. Talk to the city, not past us. Thank you all for coming. And I want to introduce our very good friend who has helped us in so many ways, but particularly during this crisis, Chairman Darrell Issa.
Thank you, Eleanor. And thank you, Mayor, for coming here to the Senate grounds today. As Eleanor Holmes Norton said more eloquently than I will, this is, in fact, an issue that absolutely spans the normal partisan behavior. Our committee, on a unanimous basis, voted for an expanded D.C. autonomy, a change in the Home Rule Act, and a prevention of this exact kind of event. And we look forward to moving it in the full House. We voted unanimously in the House of Representatives to free, that's Republicans and Democrats, to free the budget and the funds held by Mayor Gray and the City Council to the benefit of the people of the district. As someone who, when I'm here in Washington, lives in the district, I cannot help but notice that your license plates say no taxation without representation. Perhaps they should say, federal government, don't tread on me instead. The fact is that representation of your taxes is essentially what we have before us today. These are taxes paid by the people of the District of Columbia to the district, the city government. These are your money, which are entrusted to your elected officials, and in fact have never gone round trip to Washington, to these buildings. And in fact, always at the end of the day, 100% ends up being spent in the district. So to hold it back, when Ms. Norton said so well, the President supports it in his budget. The Senate supports it in their appropriation, and the House has passed unanimously legislation, misses two important points. First, this is not appropriations. This is not the subject of the argument. It is neither the Affordable Care Act nor is it appropriations. It is an item that has simply been caught in the middle of otherwise very difficult problems to solve. And secondly, no one can deny, not just on this, but on additional monies that may be needed by the city in the coming days. In times of great strife, more than anything, the federal government needs to show that we can work together on those issues that do not divide us. And the federal city, this great capital, is an issue that unites us. It has united our committee for many, many years. And in fact, it united the House to make a nonpartisan vote, and an important one. I join with the mayor and the city council and with Congresswoman Norton in making it clear we consider this something that is outside the argument because we have said essential personnel shall be maintained. Out of 2.1 million federal workers, only 400,000 are out. Well, every worker and every citizen of the District of Columbia needs to be counted as essential.
That's exactly right.
Now, even though the actions that need to take place are in a democratically controlled Senate and with a Democratic president, let us understand that, in fact, this is not the creation of Republicans or Democrats. This is a problem unrelated to the city. But we have a number of areas we want to solve. And for everyone that's here today, this is an important first step, because Leader Reid, by allowing this vote and allowing it to be voted broadly, if not unanimously, in the Senate, makes a statement about budget autonomy, something that the last referendum made clear is to the hearts and minds of almost 600,000 residents of the city. And that's an important step to be said in support of budget autonomy. Lastly, this is not the only time that Ms. Norton and the mayor and members of the council are going to be in front of you talking about important things that need to happen. In the days leading up to this, the mayor and I have talked constantly about the city picking up trash in federal parks because we're not picking them up with federal dollars, but they're causing real sanitation and rodent problems for the district, and I thank the mayor for his proactive work. And I look forward, the moment this shutdown is over, or in the final agreement to end the shutdown, for Ms. Norton and I to make sure the city gets fully compensated for the money you're spending now. Additionally, I'm sending a letter to the president, and I hope, and I think Ms. Norton and I will probably send it jointly. The letter is going to ask for the president to allow as many of the parks throughout the District of Columbia to be reopened with the city taking a principal role. Certainly the mall is contentious, and I look forward to working with the president on that. But all of you who live and work in the district know that almost on every few blocks there's a park. That park looks like a normal city park and often has a playground or a tennis court. But in fact, they are federal parks. And they are closed today, and they're closed to the residents of the District of Columbia, and they need to be opened. So there are a number of issues. There are issues that do not divide our committee with Eleanor Holmes Norton and myself, and they do not divide the Republican, Democrat, and independent members of your city council and, in fact, your mayor. So I stand with the city here today in asking respectfully for the Senate to realize this should not be a partisan issue. It cannot be held as a partisan issue. I will push to make sure every Republican Senate supports this if Leader Reid will just bring it to the floor. Thank you.
Now, I'm going to ask our mayor, Mayor Vincent Gray, to conduct the rest of the press conference and to call the other speakers. Mayor Gray.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I want to thank all of you for coming up. I, too, regret that we can't seem to afford a microphone this morning. But we'll figure out how to make this do. I want to thank Mrs. Norton, our Congresswoman, for being here with us this morning. I want to thank Congressman Issa for being with us, and for his friendship to the District of Columbia, not just during this crisis, but throughout his time as chairman, working with us to be able to free the District of Columbia and to be able to enjoy the same rights and privileges and benefits as every other state and city in the United States of America. We're here today to underscore the importance of action now, to remove the hold on the District of Columbia's budget in the midst of the shutdown of the federal government and the lack of action on the budget of the United States of America. I stand on these grounds of the U.S. Congress to say that we need both houses of Congress and the President to act now to avert further consequences and the negative impact to District of Columbia residents, employees, and visitors who are suffering because of our lack of budget autonomy. I think everybody knows that we were asked at an earlier point to submit a document to declare which of our employees and operations were essential and which of them were not. And I chose, frankly, because the executive and the council of the District of Columbia engaged in a painstaking, months-long process to put together a budget that is balanced. And frankly, I take the position that if it wasn't essential in the first place, we wouldn't have put it in the budget in the first place. So everything of the District of Columbia is essential, ladies and gentlemen. and we deserve to be able to spend our own money, the District of Columbia residents' money. You have heard that other lawmakers have gone on record as supporting budget autonomy for the district. So the question remains, why are we imperiled by the federal shutdown? And you know, as far as I can see, there has been and there is no reasonable answer to that question. We are waiting, guys. Give us an answer that makes some sense. So we're here today to say that action must be taken now. Action because we are facing what no other Americans are facing: the loss of basic municipal or state services due to this federal government shutdown. Families in Chicago or Cincinnati or Las Vegas, they're not worried about their local governments, that they won't be able to provide basic services. They're not worried about their schools. They're not worried about their police and fire protection or their health services or their trash collection. And neither should the families and residents of the District of Columbia have to worry about that, because it is our money, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard that yesterday I sent a letter to the President, to Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, and to House Speaker John Boehner, requesting an immediate meeting with them to discuss ways to alleviate the uniquely serious consequences the federal shutdown is having on the District of Columbia. And I might remind folks that we have 632,000 people who live in this city. More people than the state of Vermont, more people than the state of Wyoming, yet we don't get treated with the same level of respect as the other 50 states in this nation. Fortunately, for the first few weeks of the federal shutdown, in order to keep our city open and operating as it should be, I've been able to draw down on the district's reserve funds to pay city expenses, and I deemed, as you heard, all district employees and all operations essential. But those funds will be depleted soon, ladies and gentlemen, and the question for us is, what are we supposed to do then, when in fact we have a budget, we've generated the money? Free us so we can spend our own money and continue to run our city in a responsible way. This is day 9 of the shutdown. And this length of time for the District of Columbia to be barred from using our own funds is unprecedented. Even though there is precedent for us to be removed from the federal budget stalemate and resume spending local funds, we haven't seen the action that would free us. Many of us know that when the federal government shut down in 1995, the District of Columbia was exempted after just 5 days. But now we are on day 9. Tomorrow we will be at twice the period before, when those who had the wisdom back in 1995 finally freed us from the bondage of being able to spend our own city's money. Now, unforeseen problems that are unique to the district are now surfacing that you will hear about shortly. Problems that directly compromise the health, the safety, and welfare of residents and visitors. First of all, I want to thank the council members who come out. I had a long conversation with Council Chairman Phil Mendelson last night, who had a pressing issue that keeps him from being here. He has asked all the members to come. We got a number of members who are here. We have the Chairman Pro Tem, Kenyon McDuffie, Council Member Jim Graham, Council Member Muriel Browser, and Council Member Tommy Wells, all of whom are here. I want to ask Council Member McDuffie, who is the Pro Tem, to come up and speak on behalf of the council, and then we'll hear from others thereafter. Council Member McDuffie.
Good morning. I want to thank Chairman Issa for his advocacy and his support for D.C.'s budget autonomy. I also want to thank Congresswoman Norton, Mayor Gray, for their dedication and their tireless efforts to help us free D.C.'s budget. Here we stand in the District of Columbia, the capital of the free world, on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol, which is the bastion of democracy. And the fact that the 632,000 residents of the District of Columbia have to beg, have to plead, have to make the case to the president and Congress to let us spend our own money is unconscionable. The fact that it is unthinkable that the district's budget autonomy is tied to a Congress who has not managed to pass its own budget in years. There are 632,000 people in the District of Columbia and thousands more who work here, whose lives and livelihoods will suffer if the district's government's operations come to a halt because of this federal impasse. And the truth of the matter is, the 632,000 residents of the District of Columbia pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, just like every citizen of every state of this great nation. And just like every citizen of every other state in this great nation, we deserve the rights and privileges of full citizenship. So it's on behalf of Chairman Mendelson and my council colleagues who are here that we ask everybody assembled here today, everybody who's watching on television, everybody who's listening on the radio, to join the 632,000 residents of the District of Columbia to demand that Congress end this shutdown and free D.C.'s budget. Let's tell President Obama and every member of the United States Congress to stop holding the district's budget hostage to their petty partisan politics, because we want to spend our own money now. We want D.C. budgets free now, and we want them to make it happen. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you for supporting our effort.
Thank you very much, Councilmember McDuffie. You know, I've thought about the Pledge of Allegiance also, that we all dutifully stand up and raise our right hand and recite. And there's a line in there that says, with liberty and justice for all. And you know what? Maybe we need to amend that. With liberty and justice for all, except the people of the District of Columbia. I would like not to amend it because we can truthfully say it does include the people of the District of Columbia. And it's time, ladies and gentlemen, for that to happen. You know, there are a lot of human services providers who are affected by this shutdown, who count on federal funds like Medicaid dollars to be able to operate. One of those is Mary Center. It's a community-based agency, provides health care, family, and other services for mostly people who are low income. The person who leads that agency is here with us today, a long-time professional, long-time advocate for people in the District of Columbia. Please join me in welcoming Maria Gomez.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and I would like to see if I could please have Dr. Gloria join me at the podium right here, right now. Just as a provider in the city and in the most devastated part of the city in Southeast, she's one of the lonely providers out there providing care to our citizens. So thank you, Dr. Gloria, for being here. I am here representing Dr. Gloria and the many providers in the city, federally qualified health centers, and health institutions that are being impacted by the delay of Medicaid payments for services rendered many months ago. For most of these providers, Medicaid reimbursement represents the majority of the revenue stream that they receive. Some providers will be unable to make payments to their staff in the next week. If the Medicaid payments are not resumed in the next week, we will have DC residents out and unemployment, out, not able to make payments on their rent, on their mortgage, on child care, putting food on the table. And more important of all, we have citizens of the District of Columbia that pay taxes that are going to be impacted. For many, the lack of payments as providers will necessitate furloughs for those folks, will necessitate layoffs of employees, of critically professional that are in the city that are the only ones that are serving the safety net. That is Medicaid patients and patients who are in that category that can't afford health care but cannot be on Medicaid. In the short term, the human impact, please, ladies and gentlemen in Congress, please understand the harm to 28,000 people with mental health diseases that will be impacted, that will be on the street, because many of our mental health providers are on the verge of closing in the next week or two. There's 2 agencies that are about to furlough most of their staff, impacting definitely immediately 1,000 clients that will be on the street because they will not be able to be at the centers as they do every day. For many of us being forced to also not to accept new clients, not to accept new clients that are walking around with mental health diseases, not to accept new clients that are pregnant, not to accept new clients of children who are hurting right now for health care, and not to accept new clients of elderly in this city. Our elderly are suffering anyway, and with this we are devastated. So for Congress, for our city, please, we are not here today. We are not here today to beg. We're here to demand that our tax dollars be put to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. You know, we have over 100,000 seniors in the District of Columbia, and we have one of the most robust senior services programs in the nation. That now, of course, is being imperiled by this federal shutdown. Seabury Resources of Aging is one of the organizations that provides services to our seniors in the District of Columbia, and Joe Resch is here with us to talk about the impacts that he sees in terms of what is happening and what could further happen to seniors in the District of Columbia. Please welcome Joe Resch.
No problem. Seabury is a grantee of the D.C. Office on Aging. Citywide, we provide seniors with medical transportation. We deliver the meals to the homebound. And in wards 5 and 6, we coordinate critical services. A shutdown of the D.C. government would have life-threatening and devastating effects to our seniors, our most vulnerable citizens. 1,600 seniors in the district rely on our services to go to their medical appointments and their doctors. 566 of those have to have wheelchair transport. 83 of those have to go to dialysis 3 times a week. None of those people would be able to go to their services. 350 seniors, our most vulnerable, frail, homebound seniors, would not receive their daily meals. And across the city, the congregate meal sites would be closed. We know in wards 5 and 6 alone, we have 600 seniors who go to 16 neighborhood sites for their main and sometimes their only meal. You can see that closing down these services would be absolutely devastating and life-threatening, so we need to keep the D.C. government funded and open. Thank you.
Now, some of you may know that I spent a lot of my career working in the field of disabilities, working with people who have intellectual and developmental disabilities. And one of the people who I worked with virtually that entire time was Tom Wiles. Tom is the president of St. John's Community Services, who knows as well as anyone what the impact is and will be to an even greater extent on people who have a need for services in the District of Columbia. Please welcome Tom Wiles.
St. John's has been providing community services in the district since 1868. Here with me are many human service providers and people living with disabilities for which we provide support and opportunities to live in the community. Over 2,000 district residents who live with severe and often complex disabilities depend on Medicaid funding. Another 4,000 individuals in school and employment programs remain vulnerable. Often people require assistance 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Medicaid pays for their staff support, transportation, housing, food, and their support to obtain real employment in the community. Many of these people were once warehoused in institutions before Medicaid funding became available to build community alternatives. In recent times, families have come to depend on Medicaid for their children to receive services. This has translated into stable family lives where both parents can work. It has been a long road, over 30 years, but we have built a support system of small businesses and nonprofits that assist people with complex disabilities to receive the individual supports they need to live their lives like you and me, to live, work, and to be an integral part of our community. Last Friday, the district government could not make its Medicaid payments to providers because Congress has not authorized the district budget. For St. John's, over $600,000 was withheld. This means that the lives of our most vulnerable citizens are in jeopardy. How do we pay staff? Collectively, there are over 5,000 staff supporting people with disabilities throughout the district. How do we pay the rent and food for people? How long before our staff walk off the job? Are we now abandoning people with disabilities that count on our support? People who many of us have spent our lives trying to assist? These vulnerable people who have waited so long for the promise of leading full lives in our community. How can our Congress be so cruel, be so thoughtless? They are dismantling the service network that has taken over 30 years to build. This is not about missing a check that will be paid later. It's about people losing their jobs, losing their homes, losing their support staff, crushing the morale of people with disabilities and their dreams for the future. I'm ashamed of my Congress. I'm ashamed of my country that allows this to happen. Please don't let people living with disabilities, our neighbors who live and work in the community, be a pawn. Restore Medicaid funding to the District of Columbia and approve the district's budget.
No, in addition to what you've heard already, you all know that we are part of a region that participates in a lot of services that are delivered to us in the city and all over the metropolitan Washington area. One of those is WMATA, which we commonly call Metro. Metro has to be paid for by every member of the region. And frankly, because of this shutdown, and we can't access our own money, we have not been able to make our payment to Metro. We got a letter just a couple of days ago indicating that we haven't paid that money, which of course we know, and indicating that we are expected to make the payment with interest. That is ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen, because we have the money if the Congress would permit us to access our own dollars to pay for our services. You know, we have a robust public education system in the District of Columbia. We have more than 35,000 of our kids who now attend public charter schools. 44% of our children attend public charter schools. On the 15th of October, the charter schools are due a quarterly payment that we do not have the money to be able to pay for at this stage because our budget is being held hostage. We've asked one of our leaders of the public charter school movement to come today, who has operated an absolutely outstanding public charter school across the nation, across the city, with several campuses, who can speak to the impact on all of these children if these payments are not met. Please welcome Donald Hentz.
Congresswoman Norton, Mayor Gray, I'm here today as the operator of the largest public charter school in the district and one of the largest in the nation. We serve more than 4,000 students, mostly from low-income households. However, there are more than 35,000 students attending charter schools in the District of Columbia. My fear is that the payment that our schools are due to keep open and running will not be available to us on October 15th. Our students, the parents, and the teachers who work so hard will be shunted aside. Our high school, which has a 95% graduation rate and a 100% college acceptance rate, could not be closed at a worse time. Our kids are preparing for scholastic aptitude tests, garnering references for college, and applying for colleges throughout the country. Our schools are not just places to learn, however. In far too many instances, the meals that our students get are the only meals that they will receive. The social and emotional support so vital to our students will come to a halt. We cannot let this happen. Mr. Mayor, the clarion call you are sounding today is one that must be heard and acted upon by our national leaders. We are grateful that you have been able to keep our city running by using revenues that the residents of the District of Columbia have paid in local taxes. Yet we know that local funds and reserves are limited and will run out within days. We join you in asking our leaders to free the district to use its local funds, not just in this instance, but going forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Finally, the entire region's public safety is being compromised by the shutdown. Unlike any other city in the nation, the federal shutdown prohibits the District of Columbia from distributing what's called Urban Area Security Initiative funding to neighboring states, counties, as well as the cities in those areas. These are federal grants from the Department of Homeland Security that come to our region and are distributed by the District of Columbia. But without our budget being approved, ladies and gentlemen, we can't distribute those grants. It absolutely makes no sense any more than the rest of this makes any sense. Let's hear now from a neighbor of ours who understands clearly our plight and understands the importance to public safety and homeland security. Please welcome the Fairfax Fire Chief, Richie Bowers.
Good morning. My role here today is the chairman of the National Capital Region Council of Governments Fire Chiefs Committee. That makes up Maryland, District of Columbia, and Virginia counties and jurisdictions in the National Capital Region. Again, the purpose of my presence here today is to communicate the impacts associated with federal grants on public safety agencies in the region. The continuation of the government shutdown could negatively impact the ability of local jurisdictions to purchase public safety equipment, conduct public safety training, and continue our public safety planning efforts. The shutdown of the government impacts host grant jurisdictions, such as the District of Columbia, because they may not be able to or will not be able to forward federal grant monies to the local jurisdictions. So there are rippling effects associated with this situation. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has to end. Tomorrow, I want to invite you out to a presentation, a more detailed presentation that I intend to make to our city. It will be conducted at the Chamberlain campus of the Friendship Public Charter School, which is at 13th and Potomac Avenue, right there where Potomac and Pennsylvania merge. It will be at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow evening. It is important that we fill up the auditorium there to send the message to the House, the Senate, the Congress, to support our Congresswoman, to support Chairman Issa, to support the efforts to free us from this bondage, this hostage situation that we are in, to allow us to be able to spend our own money, ladies and gentlemen. Spend our own money. Thank you all very much.
Over there. Come on.